they really do help provide foundations for each other. So doing proper data governance, which is something that most privacy compliance frameworks are looking for, I mean, you need that in order to provide the right levels of security as well.
This is a Security Weekly production. Security Weekly is a resource of Cyber Risk Alliance.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative, in conjunction with Cyber Reason, is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC.
So Allison, thanks for joining me. I've been looking forward to this chat for a while.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on the show.
So your title has in it, before we dive into it, it's CISO and VP of Trust.
Yes.
Could you say a bit about how did you get that title? How did it come about? What's the story?
Well, I asked for it. It was very important to me to kind of differentiate some of the pieces of my scope. So I'm CISO. I'm responsible for protecting our environments that our employees are working in, and our production site, and making sure that the application code is secure and all of the normal things that a CISO would be responsible for. But I'm also responsible for some things that are user-facing, promises that we Reddit make to our users about how their information will be handled, how we think about their identity and privacy, and certain things that we do to try and keep bad actors and bad content off of our site. So
you've used some more words near and dear to my heart. And I'd love to get your take among three words. We sort of touched on trust a little bit, but how should we be differentiating, defining, or thinking about trust, security, and privacy, and maybe a bit about how you deal with that at Reddit?
Sure. So I sort of think of them as overlapping circles, not necessarily like a perfectly symmetrical Venn diagram. But on the safety, or sometimes at Reddit we call it anti-evil, we have a whole set of folks who are working on preserving user experience in the platform, in the product itself. And so these folks, and there's an engineering team behind them and data scientists looking for patterns and trends. These are folks who are taking action to protect our users and protect their experience on the site, live in the product. In other places, this might be fraud prevention or anti-spam type technologies and operations. And sometimes I describe it as they're operating at layer 8, meaning the code is working as it needs to. There's no bugs in the code. It's just sort of a natural byproduct of we're a communications platform, and communicators going to communicate, So they're working in the platform, user experience side. Then on the other side of the spectrum is security, and they're protecting our internal environments, our workspace technology, our production systems, but they're really more focused on sort of the back end. They're not as user facing. They don't have as much sort of user experience impact. And then in the middle is privacy. So privacy, a lot of privacy these days, there's a compliance element to it, which is kind of, back end, back office. But there's also sort of an intrinsic set of promises that we make to users. We provide them with privacy preferences, ways to tune their experience so that there's distinctions between what they're sharing and what's secret, and therefore we're the steward of and we need to protect. And there's architecture implications to how we do data governance at scale on a platform like Reddit, where people are generating and posting user content. So I sort of see privacy as being in the middle. They do have some user-facing features and experiences, but it's kind of an iceberg. A lot of the work is really sort of infrastructure work around how we manage data through its life cycle while it's entrusted to us until it's deleted and no longer anyone's problem.
So this iceberg image is a good one. It implies 90% of the job is never seen. I'm guessing we should just say maybe the majority of it's not seen. Do you think that there's a consistent understanding of, in particular, privacy, but also to a lesser extent, trust and security? Because I think security's been around for a while, and people sort of, I think they have a better intuitive feel for it. But do you think that there's harmony in terms of privacy here and among these terms, especially given you just said it? Hey, it's rising up. I'm going to paraphrase and say privacy seems to be becoming more of an expectation, and the definitions are changing. Do you think there's a consistent understanding?
I think that I don't see a lot of consistency around expectations about user experience in general. So the terms vary, the scopes of teams differ. I don't see a lot of consistency there. I'm not sure that it's quite a problem yet. One thing that I've observed is that every platform is going to have problems specific to its most core functionality. Meaning, in a payment system, you're going to have fraud. In a communications platform, you're going to have spam. In a gaming system, you're going to have folks who are trying to cheat, and you're going to have griefers, right? And it's the sort of the abuse case is intrinsic to the core platform functionality. And so it's hard to get consistency around, for example, what an abuse case looks like. And different platforms, mostly everything that happens on Reddit is public. That's very different than that. That's very different than when you have communication interactions that are private. So there's different sort of tolerance levels for different types of behavior, just depending on what kind of product you have, what kind of features it has, and sort of the basic setup. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No, it did. But how do you go about establishing a culture if there's no consistent definition, if these things are kind of in motion? I love the fact that it's all visible, right? And people sort of seem to know it when it goes wrong. But how do you establish these as core values? How do you do triage among them? So if you're talking to a developer one day about privacy and to a UI person the next, or maybe you're dealing with an irate customer or something from external, do you have a set of definitions you go to? Do you have a board? Do you have a group of people? Do you even go outside and ask peers, or is it research you like? How do you go about doing that cultural thing, given that it's in motion? Right.
Well, I think that at Reddit, that's sort of in the DNA, in that Reddit we host communities. And we have a principle of no unmoderated spaces. So we're people powered. Moderators are kind of built into the very fabric of how we work. So we have a natural set of interactions and discussions that we have in order to try and calibrate and set expectations, because Reddit sets platform-wide policies and norms, which we let the communities know about. And then individual communities, of course, can kind of localize those and customize those as per their preferences and sort of the tone and flavor of community that they're trying to create. It's an exercise in co-creation. So to a certain extent, socializing our expectations around things like policy, we're sort of built in a way that allows the free flow of that. But one of the things that we have done internally that's been really useful is to not just have everything be buried in our user terms and agreements, right? Is that we actually discuss and debate about the principles, the promises that we are making to users. And we've done that with topics like safety, and we've done that with topics like privacy. So there may be a law that says something somewhere, and we may have something in our user policy somewhere else, but we try and think about the values and the community and the relationship we want to have with our customers and our user base. And so we use those principles to guide discussions and decisions to make sure that at the end of the day, we're making decisions that are doing right by our community. We can always look back to our principles. That said, those principles also, we refresh them as wild things happen in the world. Maybe we go back and they can provide a pressure test. Are we still in line with our mission to provide community and belonging to everyone on the internet? Is this still fresh? And then we iterate and grow just like our communities do.
I should know this, but I don't. Does Reddit have an articulated mission, and is it part of the decision making? Is it part of the discussions here? Because I've often said, you can have legal frameworks, you can have ethical frameworks, and you can have technical frameworks, and they don't necessarily all line up. Do you have a mission statement as an organization, and does it drive making harmony among these things?
We do. The mission of Reddit is to bring community and belonging to everybody in the world. And it's actually really interesting when you are looking at even a small policy decision, if you can kind of like think about, okay, maybe this is a gray area. If we do a strict interpretation based on this, is this in line with our mission? Are we bringing community and belonging to everyone in the world? Does this further that mission, or does it just distract us? But I think we are very mission driven. So I don't want to be corny about it.
No, that's not. It's not corny. This stuff's important. This is the why Simon Sinek stuff, right? I mean, people are motivated by this.
Yes, and I'm motivated by protecting people online so that they can behave freely without sort of fear of weird stuff happening to them. So I feel like it's a really good place to kind of further that mission, and that we're bringing community and belonging to everyone in the world. And you know what? Some of the things that I am bringing related to safety, security, and privacy, they're core to that. You have to provide that for people in order for them to be able to build relationships with each other and build community. So you started with an image of a Venn diagram, and in my head, I was doing the typical security person thing and thinking, what's the hierarchy? What's the stack, right? What beats what in a conflict? And I think I'm hearing you say the mission and the vision for the company kind of gives you guidance as to which takes precedent. Is something a privacy issue or a security issue? It's not a 1 to n ranking, and so you look at what comes lower or higher. It's instead, are you on the right path? That's correct. I don't see them as, I also see them as complementary versus competitive with each other. When I describe them as a Venn diagram, it's really more in sort of a relation to, like the front end of the product versus sort of the back end of our systems, and sort of where they're most connected in and where we are applying resources. But, prioritization is tricky in every business. So it's helpful to me, though, that we are framing some of these problems. Every company has problems of information security and privacy and such, but to be able to frame those, how we're going to tackle those problems in the context of the company mission and the objectives that the company itself is pursuing is very helpful. I've always found that to be helpful. If you can really connect what you're doing as a control function as also a value function, that's always helpful in those fun prioritization discussions.
Do you think enough of these conversations are happening among peers in other companies and even other industries? Reddit sounds, first of all, you're out there, right? The conversations are seen, and people get passionate in their communities, and the potential for things to go wrong exists. So I feel like you're at the leading edge of this, and not everyone necessarily is at that leading edge. Do you think enough is happening among your conversations with peers? Are these top of mind? Is the dialogue advancing?
Well, I think you're talking about conversations like between CISOs, about
between CISOs and maybe what at one remove you hear about happening inside their companies. Are there other CISOs and VPs of trust that are sort of getting this mission centric view of privacy, trust, and security?
I think so. I think that sort of birds of a feather end up finding each other, especially if you are in social technology. We have a way of finding each other, but there's lots of collaboration that happens sector by sector. So before joining Reddit, I was at a bank. I was in financial services. And so I think that exchange of information and tips and sort of relationships exist. It seems that they are a little bit more fruitful in a sort of a sector specific way. But I do think that there's communication happening. And of course, in this job market, there's people moving from place to place and picking things up and sharing things as they grow in their career. And they are building additional techniques and protections at new companies.
Maybe as a sort of final question, looking to the future, what do you think the future holds for our efforts here? What's the right balance among these things? Feel free to address it for Reddit, but I'm interested in your view on the subjects themselves in the wider world as well.
Well, it's kind of funny because they really do help provide foundations for each other. So doing proper data governance, which is something that most privacy compliance frameworks are looking for, I mean, you need that in order to provide the right levels of security as well. So I think that the foundational elements, I think that as different companies sort of grow in their maturity around how they approach some of these problems, it pays off in the other areas as well. All three areas benefit from new technologies like data science, for example. So in in product abuse prevention context, that data science helps identify behaviors that you want to curtail. Within privacy, something like data science can help you discover sensitive information and make sure that it's labeled appropriately. And then in a security context, we're gathering telemetry from all kinds of different sources. You use data science maybe to find patterns and trends that let you know that, there's a disturbance in the force in sector 7. So it's interesting how they are going to advance together.
I've got one more I'm going to squeak in. I have to. One of the biggest problems, I think, in our industry, and it's getting better, but it feels like it's too slow, is the lack of alignment between security and most businesses. And a lot of what you said is diving into the business toolkits. It's the how do you get better at this science and how do you use technology to advance it? Do you think this is that central for you at Reddit to the business? Is it a healthy dialogue with peers who aren't in the security and the privacy or the compliance business? And do you think that that's true in the industry? Is that headed to a more positive place?
That is a good question. So I might have a little bit of an advantage because in addition to being a security nerd, I am also an economist.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
That's an unusual combination.
I studied economics. What's that?
That's an unusual combination, and it's got to be like a secret weapon.
I feel like it is sometimes. I've always been interested in the business of the businesses that I've been in. And I've been interested in things like, applied economics is really a lot of trying to assess preferences out of behaviors and things like that. So, it actually helps quite a lot because a lot of designing for security and privacy outcomes is really trying to realign incentives versus, some approaches it's like detect and alert. So I would prefer to redesign to prevent, but that's not always possible, which is why I get to spend so much time with detection systems. Can you re-ask the question?
No, that's okay. That's okay. I think you were headed somewhere really cool there. That's
It's about communicating. It's about communicating with peers and sort of the business aspect of that. Well, I think that I would say that I'm not sure how all other CISOs approach it, but the most successful CISOs that I have seen are ones that are able to hook directly into the lifeblood of the business and either unlock opportunities. Maybe in order to be eligible to go for this level of business, we need to demonstrate X. That might be a way that you might unlock an opportunity. And I think that really helps to be able to speak the language of the colleagues with whom you're competing for resources. So that's always been helpful for me in my career. And I've seen a lot of CISOs who are good at that get a lot of mileage out of that.
So that there is gold, because I spend a lot of time with CISOs that they struggle to know how to talk to the business. And the business isn't about to learn the language of security. So I think you have a secret weapon, because for two reasons. First of all, you understand the language of the boardroom and the business and the economic incentives, the human behavioral ones. And you have a second one, which is you have a unified view of this. You have a consistent model for these pieces in motion for privacy, trust, and security. So I think the combination of those things is dynamite, and hopefully others in other organizations can benefit from that.
I hope so. I mean, I've been sort of preaching this particular message for a while. I spent a lot of my career in fraud prevention. And one of the things that I learned is the easiest way to make a business case is when the value that you are protecting is already in dollars and cents. So being able to evaluate the value of a fraud model, for example, it's not easy, but the units are dollars. And so it's easy to go into a resource allocation meeting, a very competitive one. If you're bringing dollars, it's an easier case to make than the exposure associated with future potential events that you're trying to avoid, that are, like account hijackings, for example, turning that into dollars and cents. You have to do some acrobatics to get there, but being able to work in dollars and cents and talk about impact in that way. I mean, finance loves to have those conversations. So it definitely is something I think that we can all get better at as we're doing our planning, is making sure that we just tie back to business outcomes, and it not in a fluffy way, not in a hand wavy, like we're enabling the business, but actual, we're enabling that piece of that business and it's worth that much. And we need to do this to get it. And then there's a return associated with, we'll make this small investment, but it unlocks that particular business opportunity.
Thank you so
hope
much
for us all.
No, that was fantastic. I really appreciate it. And thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Cybereason is the champion for today's defenders, providing an endpoint security platform to prevent, detect, and respond to malicious operations on computers, mobile devices, servers, and the cloud. Cybereason. End cyber attacks from endpoints to the enterprise to everywhere. Learn more at cybereason.com/CISO stories.